Good morning. It is 11:02. You are at a Waterworks, Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting. It's council chambers. It is Tuesday, May 6th. And we have all our members present. We have a new member, Deb Hadley. Welcome, Deb. Item number 1 was approval of minutes from the April 8th, 2025 meeting. Would entertain a motion to accept those.
Move to accept?
From Robinson.
A second.
Second from Watson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, director's report. A lot of things in the director's report today. We'll start out running with the lead service line, and Eric will update us on that, and we'll take them one by one.
Yeah, so good news. Been working with the DNR. We do finally have a closing date for lead service line. The actual closing date will be in June, but our target date to bring to council all the financial assistance agreement to get that funding is May 27th. So
Come to finance on May 13th.
right,
Or
I'm hoping to get the financials, a loan from the DNR to get to finance next week, so I don't have to take them the same night. But so that is good news. We also started having discussions on closing for the 2025 loan. So so hopefully that'll be much more timely this year with that. As many of you know, there's definitely some changes going on at the federal level. Haven't seen a lot at the DNR, so we've been pretty stable. I think, sounds like they're really waiting on to see what the EPA is going to do. But the latest updates that I had actually from the US EPA put in the packet for you. The two big ones are PFAS and the lead and copper rule, with the potential for extending those enforcement dates out a couple years. And that was actually pushed from one of our big organizations or associations, the American Waterworks Association, AWWA. So they sent a letter in. Don't know how that's going to shake out, but I wanted to keep you apprised of some of those discussions that are happening. So some updates on drinking water and wastewater operations and our staffing, just kind of where we're at. We do have an item down there, item 6, for just further discussion and update on utility staffing. But as you can see, Scott and Ben put in some updates as far as where our staffing is currently at both of the water and the sewer. And we have a couple projects that'll be starting here too on the wastewater side for the Washington Street siphon replacement. That's over by the chamber, in front of the chamber, and across Washington Street there. We had a siphon that went under the river there, and it froze most years, and so that's getting replaced. Currently, the Clark Island building that is behind the chamber, behind the old depot, that was never served for sewer, and so this project will also serve that building. It's been on a holding tank. And then that retaining wall that's on the river there, that will also be reconstructed. That is where stormwater outfalls and stuff are that deteriorated that wall, and it's starting to collapse. So that'll be part of this project as well. So that'll be quite an extensive project over there.
Mr. Force.
What kind of traffic delays or barriers is that going to cause on Washington Street?
I think it should be just the one lane.
Lane?
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to have any full detours that I'm aware of right now. I don't know, Joe, do you have any updates on that at all yet, as far as how they're going to do that? Joe's the design engineer with Becker Hoppy.
Hello, Joe from Becker Hoppy. Just the one lane and then sidewalk detour, so is all we anticipate as part of that. So, and then maybe some short duration closures for getting equipment in and out. So
I assume there'll be some backups into that intersection.
I hope not with 2 lanes, but
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
We go back to the utility locates. Are we still seeing, are those primarily related to broadband and fiber installs, or, and are those scheduled, do they give you a schedule saying they're gonna be in this neighborhood on this day, or they give you the project list for the year?
No, they call them in individually, so areas by areas. We're managing the amount they're doing through permits through the engineering department. So they have to finish their current permits before they can move on. But there's 28 different boring companies in town. So if they can do a couple blocks a day, each one of them, that's 56 blocks. So 56 blocks is a lot of area to locate. And those locates, over 1,000, aren't just individual curb stops. They're, could be vast areas, 2 blocks at a clip, 3 blocks at a clip. They're not the only ones in town. So the lead service line replacement is also requiring a lot of staff time for locating due to the boring. We want to make sure where we have our mains marked, our services marked, et cetera. And then we have all the homeowner locates and then any construction locates as well. So that's just how we're starting off our year. Anticipate it's going to ramp up in the next couple of months.
What demand does that place on our staff
3 to 4 people a day
for all summer?
all summer. Yeah, we had talked about this before about contracting it out, and it was like $150,000 a year at that time for 7,000 locates a year. And we talked about it, and we said we'd rather hire like 3 people, bring them in, they could work on locates full-time and then do other work other times of the year. And we haven't moved on anything in there either.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Force.
Eric, I think at a previous meeting, we talked about the fact that we're getting paid, I think, $80 a locate, and that is somehow legislated, but at that rate, we were losing money. And I want to know if that's still the case.
We're not getting paid to do locates.
Pardon?
We're not getting paid to do
Oh, we're
locates.
being reimbursed $80 a locate.
No.
So then we are losing money. It is costing us.
Yeah, and we're required by the state to do the locates.
Right.
To have the utilities in the ground, we're required to locate them when people are doing work around.
Is that an item in our budget? Can we see what that expenditure is?
It's not a general item in the budget, it's just normal operations.
Do you have any estimate on what it's going to cost us this year?
I can put something together, if you,
I mean, it's just a
yeah, 200,000, I would say, at least.
few $100,000. Okay.
So we're at 1,100 so far this year?
That was last month. So the first couple of months with the snow and stuff weren't as drastic. I think we were in the 300 range, 400 range a month. This was the first year first month that they took off, and we're at 1,100,000, whatever the number is in here. We had a number of 946 in there when I was writing this the day before, and Gina adjusted it for me the next day because we ended up with over 60 coming in.
One more point. I may have misstated that. We're getting paid by the company doing the work. We're getting paid $80 a locate.
Nope.
Where did that come from? I looked back in the minutes, but I was sure that number came up at some point. I may be dreaming here, but, so we're not getting paid by the company or reimbursed? It's
No,
strictly our expense.
Actually, it costs us to be a part of the 811 system. We pay for those locate transmissions to be sent to us.
Okay.
All right, headworks screening.
Yeah, so the Headworks is a project that's a pretty significant project. We're replacing our Headworks screens, doing some building renovations and how we're, a lot of that large debris at the headworks of the plant and where that comes in. So that's going to start up in June. And so, or actually excited about that because we have a lot of issues up there at the headworks, and it's gonna make our maintenance a lot easier, but it's gonna be a little bit a bit disruptive and, but I think be a huge benefit for us in the processes as we move forward, so, yeah.
Sorry to be so
Thank you.
inquisitive here, but what's the timetable on that? When do we expect the headworks to be completed?
They have till October of 2026 to complete the project.
A year and a half, basically. Okay.
Yes.
Scott, I had a question on did we cover the staffing? Was that part of your report?
We do have a specific item to further
Okay.
discuss it down.
I'll hold off
Number
until then.
6, yeah.
Anything further on the director's report? All right, we will file the director's report. Up next is item 3 is current financial status. And it looks like we will not have Mary Ann here today. She's in some
Okay.
audit prep, so she's not going to be able to be here today.
We'll carry that to next month then.
So the next item is discussion of possible action approving the development of a grease management program and incorporation into city ordinance. So this is, we're looking at possible code update, annual inspection, maybe a fee. We talked about the fees, Mr. Forrest. This is where we certainly have an opportunity to recover some costs. Ben, are you taking this one?
If you want to explain it, Eric,
I'll-
I guess that's
I'll
fine.
kick it off and
as well.
Ben can incorporate some of the details, but, so right now, we take grease from grease interceptors from restaurants, kitchens, throughout the city, and I think you said, what, about 40,000 gallons?
On average,
On
40,000 gallons of grease trap waste each month.
Yeah, each month. So, one of the things that we're finding out in the system, that the county health department doesn't inspect these, and have them, require maintenance or anything on them. But I think for us, this is a program that we can implement at the utility, in our ordinance. And it kind of overlaps with the plumbing code. The plumbing code requires that they do inspections on their grease interceptors every, I think, 90 days, so 4 times a year. We have differences too, some of them are interior grease tanks and some are exterior, the larger ones. But I think, one, for us to understand how many are out there, what's out there, and to make sure that they're properly maintained. That food waste and that grease comes in at a pretty high concentration, right? And so if we get big slugs of it, it can be disruptive in our processes. So Ben's been doing a pretty good job working with the septic haulers to make sure that it comes in over time rather than, all in one day. But I think knowing that these are properly maintained will help also minimize the grease that's coming into our system, in the collection system, which goes into our lift stations and creates issues throughout the system. So, so one of the options would be to have an annual permit process, and then they can provide us the information that their grease tanks, grease interceptors are, maintained, that they're inspected properly throughout the year. We wouldn't do those inspections. They would be done by a third party and on the responsibility of the kitchen or the restaurant. And then in order for them to get their annual permit, they would have to provide those inspections, to us. We do a nominal fee for the permit every year for however many are out there. We did begin communications with the Marathon County Health Department to try to get what their numbers are, how many are within the city limits and where they are, and so that will be our first step. This is on the agenda actually for action. One of the things before we went and drove in to do all this work and to do all that, would like some feedback from the commission, any ideas, and then if there's support for this, and then we would begin working on this year, and then have something come back later this year with a draft. Begin working with legal. This would probably take us several months to put together, but yeah.
Mr. Force.
I certainly would support this. I'm surprised, actually, that we don't have a grease program. I think many of the municipalities that I write about in my magazine work do have a grease control program. So I guess I would like to move that the city move ahead and contact other communities, develop a draft grease control program that you bring back to the commission for discussion and potential approval.
So motion from Force to draft a grease management program. Do we have a second?
And bring it back to our commission for approval.
Draft form, sure.
Thank you.
A second from Watson. And I could add, so it's part of why this is here is we discover there's problems when these grease traps back up and then they have an issue. And then it's determined that it hasn't been looked at or inspected in years. So there's probably more, there's a handful of offenders. There's probably some that dutifully service them, but I think this would then give us an opportunity to see what that inventory is and stay ahead of it before we have problems. And it's exceedingly, or we'll talk about it in the next item, but it's difficult for us to process if it's not coming in the right dosages, if you will. So we have a motion. Any other comments or suggestions on that? Mr. Robinson.
I just have a question relative to application. So you mentioned that it's coming in from the septic hauler. So are they doing the pickups from the restaurants in Wausau or through the area? And, why can't can we work with the retail food regulations and get this incorporated into the health codes? It would make sense for that to be part of that on an ongoing basis in addition to the ordinance, because you're not doing the inspection. So I would hope that in our evaluation of our options that we look at who are we serving and how are we serving them and what's the best regulatory mechanism in which to accomplish the end goal.
Yeah, I mean, as far as where it's coming from, Ben, I don't know is it coming from outside the area?
We
I
have
mean,
one hauler that brings it in on a regular basis. I work with that hauler to maintain a low level of gallons per month, weekly. He spreads it out, and it's hard for them because they try to concentrate their grease traps all in a week or a couple weeks, and they want to get rid of it, but they got to understand, or they do understand how it impacts the treatment and the processes down there. So it's been working out well with this particular hauler, and what prompted this mainly is one of the local establishments, their grease trap tank reservoir backed up, and then the hauler had contacted me, and we worked together to spread that load out after he had pumped the tank, and he had told me it hadn't been pumped in years. So
I mean, I think to help answer your question too, John, is that, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely work with the health agencies, but I do think, I don't know what it will take for them, to add things in to what they're inspecting, how they're inspecting it, and I don't know what that process would be. I couldn't tell you at this point. But, like I said, we've reached out to the health department, but it's just been a couple calls. We haven't dove into that, so, yeah.
It just would make, from an enforcement, my fear is that if we don't have a mechanism to do the inspection, you're going to be right back where we are today, where it basically backs up. And, so I think we need to look for a realistic and practical compliance without creating some additional work for our staff. So I would encourage us, as we do this, to work closely with the health department on that retail food. And then, are there alternatives relative to disposal like rock oil, or is it this the easiest and cheapest for them, or are there viable, cost-effective alternatives?
there are other alternatives, as you had mentioned, and there's businesses out of Green Bay that go around to these establishments and collect the grease weekly, monthly, whatever their needs are, and they'll dispose of it in Green Bay somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if Rock Oil accepts grease trap waste. I'm not certain. The one over in Stratford,
Yeah.
I'm uncertain of that. I can check into that though. But I have reached out to several utilities so far, and there's a few that do have the grease management programs, and I'm seeing health departments administer it or manage it. I'm seeing utilities manage it, inspections manage it. So that'll be yet to be determined who's gonna manage that program. So it'll be a big task.
Yeah.
Anything further? So with a motion and a second to draft a grease management program, potential draft for city ordinance, we have the city attorney here today. And we will bring it back to this body for a final approval and last cut, or next steps. All those in favor of accepting the development of a grease management program and incorporate into city ordinance draft, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Similar here, but similar but different. This is number 5, discussion of possible action approving the restructuring of septic holding / grease tank waste hauling and dumping rates fee schedule. So these are the items we talked about that get pumped and hauled in, and there's a chart that shows what we're charging versus what some of the other areas are charging. And Ben can speak to the cost, but it does cost the city to process this stuff, and it costs us in terms of how it affects the equipment, how quickly we can meter it in, how much we're taking. And Ben, if you want to help us understand where you think we should go with this.
Sure. With the approval from the commission, I'd like to move forward with the restructuring the holding or the septic tank hauler waste that's coming into the plant. Holding tank, septic tank, grease trap waste. I would like to honestly do away with a blended rate for the simple fact that you don't know what's coming in with these loads. You would have to test every single load to make certain of it. They do make, or there's businesses that manufacture hauler disposal equipment where it'll monitor flows. It keeps the haulers honest, but it's very, very expensive. You can distinguish the type of waste by the pH, different pH levels that this equipment would show us. You'd be able to distinguish if it's holding tank or septic tank, not necessarily grease trap waste. Very expensive to incorporate, but who knows, maybe in the long run it'd pay for itself. So I'll have to look into those costs as well. To implement something like that, there's the current fee schedule is using cubic feet units, whereas a lot of these utilities I've reached out to in my former place of employment, we use the 1,000 gallons per 1,000 gallon units for the calculation to distinguish the surcharge in place. That'd be my recommendation to switch over to that. It's more intuitive and it's easier for the haulers to understand, the owners, operators. The fee schedule below, those are just some of the utilities I've reached out to thus far. There's several more that aren't included on this list. As you can see, the fee schedules are all over the board, mainly because it costs money, different monies for different types of facilities to treat the waste that's coming in. And the blank spaces or columns are these utilities are not accepting that waste, or they don't have a blended rate in that. So, with your approval, we'd like to move forward and restructure it. We'll come up with a draft as we would with the grease management program and present that in the near future.
Entertain, Mr. Robinson.
I would move to authorize or direct staff to update the hauler fee schedule reflecting what our cost and impact to the system would be based on comparables.
Okay, motion from Robinson, second from Mr. Force. And just a note here, he's showing per 1,000 gallons. These hauler trucks are probably on the small side, 4,000 up to 6,000 gallons.
1,000 and up, yes.
And it looks like we're most askew here on our grease trap, 89 versus 250. Okay, motion and a second. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the restructuring of the septic holding rate fees signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that passes. All right. Item 6, discussion and update on utility staffing and operations. So this is not an action item, but we'll be talking about some of the things that were in the director's report and where we think we need to move the cheese. Who's taking that one?
I can kick this off and then, so I think, as some of you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've talked about, as those plants were being built, right, the issue with retention of staff, needing staff, additions. We had an assessment done, staffing assessment done by Baker Tilly, which is in here as well. And we just, haven't really moved forward with a lot of that. And so, just last year was approved for a couple additional staffing at wastewater and 1 additional at water. Those are currently were approved for the 25 budget, so we're currently out advertising for those positions to fill them. We are at a point right now, thankfully, at the wastewater, we're doing fairly well. At water, not so much. We just lost another individual. And I think this is going to continue to be a struggle, but I think that looking back on the information that, was provided, I think that we're going to have to move forward and take some actions. And so we will be having discussions about looking at wages for retention, looking at wage studies, looking at other comparables, and really where the utility's at as far as where we're losing people to for whether it's higher pay, more benefits, whatever the case may be. But I bring this forward because we are at the situation a few years ago that we talked to you about at the water utility, and we are kind of on the precipice of the potential for having to contract out some operations. And that's a real concern for me because it's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive than it would be to hire or add staff. And so, Scott, you can fill in any information too, just with the demand on our staff right now as it is and losing people. So
We have a great demand, one of the points bringing this forward is just, when we started talking about this 4 years ago, we had 2 very experienced staff members that we wanted to get as much knowledge out of them as we could. We didn't add staff at that time. Now where we're sitting with our operator who came to us with a lot of experience is now leaving. So we have 1 person who has been with us long enough to see the construction of that plant as a relief operator. He has moved into a technical position in which he's been there for 2 years. That's our most experienced plant personnel for our staff. So he's basically in charge of a $60 million facility. The 2 people that he has working under him have just over a year of technician experience each. So you have 4 years and 7 months combined total of experience. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with operations, but you're going to pay for experience one way or another, right? So we either hire people with experience, pay a little more money, or we have people with less experience who make mistakes, or we have to contract operations. Generally, it costs you a lot more money. We can bring some more money back. Just the one distribution maintainer that we lost, he had come to us with some experience in a CDL. Currently, we're paying, I have to run the exact numbers, anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 by the time we pay wages to bring in an employee without a CDL and bring them up to speed because they need one. So our costs for bringing people up to speed are generally more than if we would just bring people in with some kind of experience or some technical aptitude that relates to what we do. Our employees are great. They all want to learn. They fit in well. They have a good culture, but they're inexperienced. Right now, we're paying for inexperience. We have a couple of employees, this key employee, if they leave, we're not going to have a lot of experience to even train people coming in. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind, right? We don't have any succession planning. You're supposed to have an heir and a spare, right? Ben leaves tomorrow, he's got an heir and maybe a spare. I have nobody. I get hit by a bus, Eric's running the utility. I don't know what to tell you. We've been harping on this for 4 years. I'm not sure what needs to be said or what kind of catastrophe has to happen before something gets done.
Mr. Robinson?
So where, there's been talk about pay studies. We've got a new HR director for the city. Is this something that they can look at? I know the county, is in the process of updating their most recent pay study, and I think you have to do that on a regular basis, and particularly you have to look at those areas where you seem to be falling behind and not able to retain or attract people. So I would strongly encourage the HR department to take a good look at this and accelerate any plans relative to it. Do we know the reason why they're leaving? Are they leaving because of wages? Are they leaving because of hours? Are we doing post-employment surveys?
We are, and I haven't seen the results, but the conversations I've had with the employees are generally more money. The one of these is going to Weston for $5 more an hour. The last distribution maintainer we lost went to Schofield for $5 more an hour. We're the,
Resigned after 6 weeks?
excuse me?
The one who resigned after 6 weeks?
Yes. The position was slightly different, but more money.
So could we perhaps have the HR director weigh in or at the next meeting relative to a timely approach to address this issue?
We can, I think we even schedule a meeting to talk about this. So there's a couple of items here, whether it's citywide or whether we target the utilities. Could be either. We will be bringing that back, yes. It's not, I mean, I've sat in on these a couple years back, and I know that was an issue. I watched them on TV. This was an issue, so it's definitely something we have to get a handle on and find out where we can go to improve it.
If I could add, that wastewater is in the same boat as the water department. Every time advertisements come out for job openings in Schofield, Weston, Rib Mountain Metro, Stevens Point, Plover, they're all paying higher. We sit there and hold our breath and hope and pray that our leaders are not going to leave us.
Plover just filled an operator's position at the same rate as we're advertising for a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add.
Go ahead.
We've been discussing this for a long, long time. It seems like almost every meeting, this comes up. I don't think we've had anybody leave after 6 weeks. That's, I think, a new record, not a desirable record. But, we've had HR look at this. We've talked about internships with the technical school or other institutions. We've done salary surveys. I think John's question about exit interviews, we've had that discussion a number of times, and we just don't seem to be able to get a handle on it. If it's just salary, well, then there's only one solution for that, if that really is the only problem. But it seems to me that there's something more systemic here.
In the memos that were provided in the packet, Jim, if you go to that back memo, I believe it was by Tony Vanderboom to the council in '21.
Yeah, it goes back
At
years.
that time, she did a survey of employees, and she picked out 5 or 6 questions, asked them why they would leave a job. why they would stay at a job. There was 3 criteria, that the charts in the back there. All top answers came back to pay. Why do you go for a job? Why do you stay for a job? When you come back to the other options, you can work around. Everybody stays at a place of employment for their own reasons. But if you can work at a place 2 miles down the road for $5 more an hour, where are you going to be?
Well, I'm just afraid that if we continue to study this, we're not going to come up with the right answer, because we've been studying it for years, and obviously we haven't come up with the right answer. And if it's more pay, that has a significant financial impact on the city, and I don't know where that money comes from. I don't know what the answer is either, but it just seems like we've been unable to deal with this successfully, and that's a failure on our part.
I think one of the solutions is that the city needs to look at how competitive they are as opposed to all the other surrounding communities within a 50 to 100 mile radius. I think that's where we're generally losing these employees to local communities. So I think that's where it needs to start.
HR, can you move it instead of just another meeting? Since you've had there's a lot of information in this packet about what they have been doing. Now, should you do it again, but.
There is a lot of information to build from, that is for sure. It is a priority, it is a front burner item, and Eric and I have talked about getting the new HR director in the loop on this. And, you know, the discussion is gonna be, is this an emergency to concentrate on utilities? Do we take a broader approach? So we have to determine, you know, what that's gonna look like. I think in the short term, this is probably a priority that we need to look at. So the answer is, yes, it's twofold. It's one, it's ours with the Water Commission, and second, it's HR. Anything further on that?
I think one of the things is that, you know, there's always a discussion too, right? And I think I'm hopeful that, you know, working with Lisa, the new HR director, she has experience in this, so I'm hoping that there can be some potential opportunities, you know, and recommendations from her on where to go that can be presented to the commission here. And I know that there's financial implications, and there's a lot of discussion about, you know, revenues in the utility and, you know, affordability and things like that. But I think we talk about the tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that we have that we maintain and everything, right? But really the asset that always gets lost is our staff, and they are the number one asset in the city. And if we don't maintain the assets as far as our staff, then none of these things will function. So I think that has to be the priority, and that has to be the top look right now. And I think that has to be incorporated in the budget moving into '26, and we need to make room for it, regardless of what it's going to look like and what the recommendations are. We need to make room for it. It's the only way the utility is going to be successful. And right now, I think we're on a path to not be successful. It's very dangerous.
It's a comprehensive look. There's a lot of things, you know, we talked earlier about the pilot payment. It's going to be something we're going to have to put on the budget. Where does that go?
Sure.
Can that provide extra financial revenue for any additions? So it is, you know, a few years ago, we looked at abolishing the commission. I think we as a commission have a better understanding of the utilities, and I think it needs to stay here. And I think we can help drive that, and we'll put it on the front burner, and I'll get this back to us as soon as we can through HR. Next meeting is scheduled for June 3rd. 2025 at 11 a.m. right here, same place. And prior to adjourning, well, Joe, Jean will be here hopefully on the 23rd. We'll farewell Joe. And again, welcome to Deb Hadley. Anything else for the good of the order here? Would entertain a motion to adjourn. From Watson, second from Hadley. All in favor? Signify by saying aye. See you later.